This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
Still on the conversations this morning, a report published across several national dailies has accused Matrix Energy Limited, a Nigerian-owned energy company, of importing off-spec petroleum products from Russia into Nigeria through Malta. Equally concerning are remarks from the chairman of Dangote Refineries Limited, Aliko Dangote, that petroleum products bought from Malta have unsafe sulfur levels for the Nigerian market. Since February 2023, Russia has been blacklisted from selling oil on the international market as a consequence of its invasion of Ukraine. Joining us this morning is oil and gas expert and legal practitioner Ayodele Oni. Mr. Oni, what is the likelihood of these accusations being true?
Well, to be honest, I do not have all the facts. One thing I know, however, is that the law encourages the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority to encourage backward integration in the downstream petroleum sector, to encourage local refining. In fact, we shouldn't be having this conversation. First, there's supposed to be substantial local refining with a Dangote and a number of the modular refineries. With respect to PMS, many of the modular refineries may not be doing PMS, but will be doing diesel and other petroleum products. It's only when we even have a shortfall we should be discussing imports. So it's possible. The more serious issue is even the quality, because if you look at the PIA, if you look at the law, we have minimum standards. There's a 50 per million ppm sulfur content. There's the AFRI 5 specification, and it's 50 parts per million sulfur that is supposed to be in any of our petroleum products, particularly the PMS. So and like you rightly stated, there is Russia has a number of challenges, right? People are not supposed to buy products from them and import a number of items. So if that's the case, because you hear a lot of rumors in Nigeria until you're absolutely certain, you can't make categorical statements. I can make categorical statements based on the facts I'm aware of and the law and policy. So I do not know for certain what the likelihood is. But anything happens in Nigeria, so it's possible, right?
So let's talk about the quality of diesel, right? This was, of course, after the whole back and forth happened with the Dangote refinery and the regulators. And then we found out that diesel already imported into the country had astronomical levels of sulfur. Now, the trouble is that at the point of recording, by the regulators, it doesn't show that this diesel imported is of poor quality. Can you speak to us on where this discrepancy could possibly be? If we were to identify what the issues were, how do we go about doing that?
Okay. To be completely honest, Nigeria has some of the best laws, regulations, and policies, and some of the most brilliant minds. But a country that, my view is that there's corruption almost everywhere in the world, right? It's just the level of corruption, whether it's brazen, goes to the root and the foundation of that nation, where everything reduced by corruption, or where it's very minimal, like what we see in the first world. In Nigeria, for example, I said that we have laws, policies, human capital in terms of quality. You would find that we have rules around what the specification of imported petroleum products should be. It should conform with the AFRI 5 specification, which is 50 parts per million for sulfur, right? It's even an ECOWAS declaration. There's an ECOWAS declaration behind that standard, a 2020 February declaration, right? So that's that. Now, the problem usually is bribery, is corruption at the point of recording. So you're supposed to record, pay a fee, or whatever you're supposed to do, and then move on. If you bring in what is wrong, then it's confiscated, then whether destroyed or whatever else ought to be done. But someone is giving a bribe and then looks away, right? That's what you would suspect if the wrong quality of products are imported. And really, we should be winding down importation of products, because what the law requires is that there should be local refining unless you then have situations of shortfall. If there are no shortfalls, then we shouldn't even really be having this conversation. We should not be in conversation whether our local refiners have enough crude. The conversation should be, do we have shortfalls in refining? I don't think we should in a few weeks to come, if Dangote keeps his promise and the NNPC does keep a promise. So I think once a country is riddled by corruption, you'd have a lot of things going wrong, regardless of the quality of the laws and the quality of the policies.
Right. So, Mr. Oni, if the NNPC and the regulators have been accused of some level of culpability in this matter, who should we expect to investigate these claims?
Now that's where the challenge is. If they say the regulator is culpable, then it becomes a challenge, because the regulator is then supposed to be the one who's supposed to be investigating participants in that industry, the producers, the downstream people, the refiners. So if they have issues, then you begin to talk about people like the national, because that's why you have the sort of democracy we have, where we have three forms of forms of government. You have the legislature to make the law, you have the executive to implement, and you have the judiciary. So it should not be the legislature and the judiciary dealing with these issues, because really the regulators are part of the executive, so to speak, right? So it should be the National Assembly and people going to court to get interpretation of certain laws, to get interpretation of the rules, and for the National Assembly to investigate. Now, the question is whether there's been a lot of accusation around the National Assembly itself, that's been riddled with, and there have been accusations that the National Assembly has been riddled with corruption over time. So, how do you then know that the result will be a fair one, will be one devoid of corrupt practices? These are questions. I'm not making any allegation. I'm just asking questions, right? Because there are several allegations and a lot of back and forth. So it's the role of the National Assembly, because there should be checks and balances in a federal system. There should be the role of the legislature and ultimately the judiciary. Of course, the judiciary does not act suo motu as own. Someone needs to go to court to trigger it, right, to interpret the law, to get an injunction or something, So I think it's the other arms of government who should then be dealing with the issues.
Right. Well, Mr. Oni, thank you very much for your time and your expertise on this conversation. Ayodele Oni is an oil and gas expert who joined us this morning to speak on a report which has been published across several national newspapers that accuses Matrix Energy Nigeria Limited, a Nigerian-owned energy company, of importing off-spec petroleum products from Russia into Nigeria through Malta. You're still on to your Beyond the News station. We ask that you stay tuned. At 7:35 a.m. this morning, it'll be time for News Extra. Good morning.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.